So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Assembly of Osteopathic Graduate Medical Educators webinar series. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Zamuda, and I'm the Director of Medical Education at Ohio Health Doctors Hospital in Columbus, Ohio, and I am the lucky person who gets to moderate this webinar. So we're pleased to have you join us for this GME Development Series webinar hosted by AOGME and ACOM's UME-GME Task Force. The webinar will highlight best practices for developing osteopathic neuromuscular medicine, ONMM, residency programs. The panelists for this session today are Dr. Lorenzo Pence, Senior Vice President of Osteopathic Accreditation at the ACGME, and Dr. Jennifer Kingery, Program Director of the ONMM residency program at Ohio Health Oblenis Hospital. So before we get started, I'll just cover a few housekeeping notes. Obviously, this webinar will be recorded and will be posted on the AOGME webpage within the next week or so. All webinar participants are in listen-only mode so that we can make sure to hear the wonderful speakers. If you have technical issues, please use the chat feature and we'll be able to assist you. And if you have questions for the presenters during the webinar, please submit them through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And if time permits at the end, they'll respond to those questions. So before we get started, I want to give a brief overview of ACOM's UME-GME Task Force. In 2022, the ACOM Board of Deans established the UME-GME Task Force to address the transition from UME to GME, improve graduate level osteopathic medical education, and strengthen the osteopathic model of medical education. In the 3-year effort, which was recently approved for a 3-year extension, it was led by a 17-member steering committee and chaired by the ACOM Board of Deans member, Brian Kessler, DO, who's the Dean and Chief of Academic Officer at Campbell University, Jerry M. Wallace School of Osteopathic Medicine. There are 106 members of the task force, and there is diverse geographical and institutional representation among members. The task force working group on graduate level osteopathic training seeks to study and advance osteopathic medicine and GME. And to that end, they oversee the first mixed method study of osteopathic recognition and are hosting a series of regional OMM workshops for preceptors of osteopathic medical students and residents. And this webinar is a result of efforts within the working group to educate the community on ways to advance graduate level osteopathic training. You can learn more about the UME-GME Task Force and its work by visiting the ACOM website or by scanning that QR code. So thank you again to Dr. Pence and Dr. Kingery for being with us today and for preparing for this presentation. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Pence.
Let me share my screen. I hope everybody can see my screen now. Okay. Well, welcome everyone today. I much appreciate the opportunity to provide somewhat of an overview and an update on a very important, especially ONMM. And I think this is the first time we've had that opportunity here for some time. So again, it's much appreciated to AOGME and ACOM for allowing us to provide a short presentation today. So my disclosures today, I have no conflict of interest or financial relationships to disclose. I'm a full-time employee of ACGME. I always start my presentations with the ACGME mission statement. The mission of the ACGME is to improve healthcare and population health by assessing and enhancing the quality of resident physicians' education through advancements in accreditation and education. Moving to how ONMM and osteopathic recognition was established at ACGME. This started with the transition to a single accreditation system starting on July 1st of 2015. It lasted about 60 months, and it was completed on June 30th, 2020. ONMM. So before the transition, and NNM was an established specialty under AOA. And this was a new specialty added, ONMM, to ACGME with the transition to a single accreditation system. The new review committee started as a work group in 2014 and was approved by the ACGME board as a new committee in February of 2015. After the approval, the new committee specialty existing AOA programs, NNM programs could now submit applications for new ONMM programs starting on July 1st, 2015. So since the start of the transition, there have been 32 ONMM programs. 29 of those came from former AOA programs, and 3 new programs were established that were not originally AOA programs. There had never been any osteopathic training in these institutions before. So these were brand new programs not associated with a single accreditation system. And the current status of those programs right now is we have 1 in initial accreditation. We have 5 with initial with warning. There's 18 with continued accreditation, and that's where we want all of our programs to be, is to get to continued accreditation and maintain that. We have 1 with continued accreditation with warning. We've had some programs that voluntarily withdrew under good status. They were all accredited programs with no issues, but they chose to voluntarily withdraw their accreditation. And there were 2 that had voluntary withdrawal. They were in pre-accreditation or continued pre-accreditation, so they decided not to complete the process to move forward with ACGME accreditation. And currently we have a couple that are in the application process that we hope we looked at sometime in the future. If you look where ONMM programs are across the country, as you can see, many of them are in the eastern United States, and there's some in the South and a little bit in the West. But you can see there's a lot of states that do not have programs. And again, because it's a small program and not always well known, we hope to see some of these other states ultimately have programs. Much of the interest for ONMM has been associated with new colleges of osteopathic medicine. Actually, that's where some of the new ones actually came from during the transition that were not associated with AOA programs. And some of that interest even today is associated with new comms that may be looking to develop new ONMM programs. If you look at the number of ONMM residents from academic year, now again, this starts in 2016-17 and goes up through this academic year. Now, obviously, there were more ONMM residents within AOA programs, but that's not reflected here. This is only a reflection of what actually came through ACGME as those programs got established and became ACGME accredited. That's how the numbers started increasing over the years of the transition, and then since then. And actually, this year, I think we have the most residents to date. If you look specifically what type of ONMM residents, whether they're osteopathic residents, allopathic residents, international graduates, this gives you some sense of that. So the number of residents in ONMM programs that achieved ACGME accreditation, they really have increased each year, which includes residents starting in 2018-2019, where we first saw the first allopathic resident in an ONMM program. Currently, there's 87 residents in programs for this current academic year. 81 are osteopathic graduates or residents, and 6 are allopathic residents, 3 from LCME and 3 from international. If you look at, and we started the transition 2014-2015 today, if you look each year, there's been an increasing number of graduates from ONMM programs, initially as those programs became ACGME accredited. And currently, from the last information we have on graduates, there were 48 in 2021, 2022. 45 DOs, and 3 MDs. So again, the first MDs that actually graduated from an ONMM program was in 21-22. So many times we get questions about what other things that a ONMM resident would be qualified to go into as far as fellowships. Fellowships are always of interest of all specialties, graduates of any of the specialties. So there are a few things that an ONMM resident can pursue following graduation from an ONMM program. One of those is addiction medicine, which is a relatively new residency and specialty or subspecialty at ACGME. Clinical informatics, it's a multi-specialty fellowship. Pain medicine, again, multi-specialty recognized as far as who can go into pain medicine. And sports medicine, which is the newest thing that's been actually added to the list that ONMM residents could pursue following a completion of an ONMM residency. But also, many of our ONMM residents also may have completed another residency in another specialty before moving into ONMM, or our plus ones, as some people may call them. So they may be they may have opportunities for other fellowships available based upon the specialty that they completed prior to ONMM. So talking a little bit about osteopathic recognition, again, this was born of the transition of the single accreditation system. Prior to 2015, ACGME did not provide opportunity for osteopathic training prior to the transition. The new review committee, very similar to ONMM, started as a work group in 2014, and it was approved by the ACGME board as a new committee in February of 2015. Similar timeline as ONMM. So after the approval of the new committee and recognition, and osteopathic recognition was the first recognition offered and noted by ACGME. So then ACGME accreditor programs and AOA programs in the application process would have the opportunity to apply for OR programs starting July 1st of 2015. So if you look at the number of programs with recognition, there are currently 262 programs with osteopathic recognition. Most are in primary care, family medicine, internal medicine. And we also have a couple of applications that are in process right now that will be reviewed at some future ORC meeting. So a couple of things that we heard specifically at our ACGME annual conference, and also recently at the ACOM Educational Leaders Conference. We have a lot of individuals and a lot of physicians that have a great interest still in developing programs in osteopathic recognition. And some of the goals that came from both AEC and the Educating Leaders Conference was noted that they'd like to see us a goal of 25 additional programs applying and achieving OR over the next year. I will tell you, in all those early years of the transition, the committee celebrated every time we hit at 100 mark. At the 100 mark, we had a big celebration. Then at the 200 mark, we had a celebration. And I'm very anxious to have another celebration when we hit the 300 mark and then some. So if you have an interest, we hope that you would want to pursue a program with osteopathic recognition. Looking at where the programs of recognition, as you can see, now they're scattered out a little bit more across the country, some places more than others. It really gives you a sense of how many of those programs in various states. Obviously, Pennsylvania and Ohio and Michigan, Oklahoma and Illinois and Wisconsin, New York and New Jersey, they top the list. and there's plenty of room for more programs across the country. So we hope to see these numbers continue to increase. There are some states that have not pursued programs of recognition as of this date, but we hope to see those populated with programs in the future, as well as additional programs within the states that already have programs with osteopathic recognition. If you look at the larger number of programs, internal medicine and family medicine being the top and internal medicine being the next, but everything else here, emergency medicine, orthopedics, surgery and surgery and transitional year all have 5 programs or more that have achieved osteopathic recognition, and we hope that number continues to increase with time as well. Now, if we look at those that may have 1 to 4 programs, it's important that we have other specialties that want to engage in applying and achieving osteopathic recognition, and we've had a very, very nice selection. We just would like to see more in that particular specialty move forward with applications and ultimately become programs with osteopathic recognition. As you can see out of the list, we have 4 in sports medicine. There's 1 in ped sports medicine as well. We have OBGYN and otolaryngology and peds. The other specialties that have more than just a couple, they have up to 4, but we would like to see all these numbers grow. And also there's so many other specialties that have not achieved any of the programs in that specialty have not achieved osteopathic recognition. And remember, when these requirements were developed, it was to try to make sure that there was opportunity for all ACGME specialties and subspecialties would have opportunity to apply and achieve osteopathic recognition. So when you think about the number of programs that can actually offer osteopathic education, we have ONMM and OR programs that certainly can provide osteopathic education. And again, this is all new associated with single accreditation because prior to single accreditation, there was no opportunity to have any osteopathic education in ACGME programs. So currently, we have 288 programs, 262 with OR and 26 ONMM programs that actually can provide that education for those that may would like to pursue having that additional education. Both our osteopathic graduates to continue to enhance their skills, but also our allopathic colleagues who have an interest and would like to learn more about osteopathic medicine and certainly learn some of our principles and practices and the philosophy to utilize some of those skills in caring for their patients as well. So I'm going to touch briefly just on ACGME growth because we get a lot of questions about how we're doing and how it's looking as far as positions and whatnot. So just we'll go back to 2015, July 1st of 2015. When the transition started, ACGME accredited approximately 9,645 programs. It was 27 review committees and 1 institutional review committee for a total of 28 committees. The AOA accredited about 1,244 programs, including 165 duly accredited programs, which was included in that number. At that time, there were 8,626 AOA filled positions of all AOA programs, and not all AOA accredited programs had residents, and some of those programs had never had a resident. And when you look at the number of DOs that were in ACGME programs at that time, it was right at the 11,000 mark. And when you look at the percentages of GME across the country, AOA programs made up about 11% of the GME, and ACGME programs made up approximately 89% of the GME that we knew of that day. So if you look at the number of ACGME programs today, and we go back to 2012, 2013, up through this academic year, if we add the numbers from 22 and 23 to 23, 24 to this total list, there's been actually an increase of 4,066 programs. And when you look at the percentage of change, it was about 43, almost 44%, that has increased in this last decade. And actually, about 25% of that increase was associated with SAS transition years. And when that transition was completed, 710 of the single accreditation system programs achieved accreditation. And of course, if you add the 165 that were already accredited, that gives you a pretty good number based upon where we were at the time, based upon the 1,244 programs. I know this is a very busy slide, but it was the easiest way I could show growth in the number of residents and fellows that are actually within ACGME, both from a total and also from our different groups, whether it be our osteopathic graduates, LCME graduates, international graduates, and our Canadian graduates. So if you're looking at residents in ACGME programs, technically, as a whole, has increased about 34% over this last decade. If you look at LCME grads, it's about 23%. If you look at international grads, it's about 15%. If you look at osteopathic grads, you look about 193%. So we've made significant increases in ACGME programs, I think, as we all know. Certainly, we have more graduates from our comms, and of course, our profession, I think, is noted as probably the fastest growing health care profession in the country. The only group that seemed to have a decline, and there has never been a lot of Canadians within ACGME programs, but there's always some, and it's actually went down about 29% over this time period. If we look at the status of resident positions, and of course, that increasing number of positions makes it more available to all the graduates. So the trends include the single accreditation or single GME position transitions, that is increased numbers. The traditional growth of ACGME positions, which has been an ongoing process during the transition and continues today with new program development. New specialties and subspecialties have added to these numbers. And of course, rural track development is very important, and there's growth there as well. So all these areas have actually increased the number of positions available to graduates. If you look at the total ACGME graduates, and also I wanted to make sure everybody knew about the osteopathic graduates and how that's changed over this period of time, particularly from 2014, 15 through 21 and 22, you'll see there was an increase of about 9,871 ACGME graduates as a total, and that's almost a 25% increase. And during the same time frame, there was about 4,899 osteopathic graduates, which was about 135% increase. If you look at the status of osteopathic physicians, and you look at osteopathic physicians in ACGME programs, and you look at the numbers from 2014-15 through 22-23, we more than doubled to about 28,170, which is about 156% increase. If you look from 2013-2014 through that same time period, there was about the numbers almost tripled, about 193% increase. And again, of all these, about 17.8% of the residents were DO. if you look at pipeline programs, and these are specialties that lead to a primary board certification, that's what we describe as pipeline programs at ACGME. That also more than doubled during those time frames. And actually, if you go back to 2013, 2014, it's almost also tripled. So we're looking about 172% increase in pipeline programs. DOs make up over almost 19%. And if you look at ACGME today, as of yesterday, we had 893 institutions, over 13,000 programs, over 163,000 residents. Now we have 28 review committees, one institutional committee, and one recognition committee, so a total of 30 committees. We have combined programs, and some of those are actually osteopathic combined programs, family medicine, ONMM, family medicine, EM. These are all things that we brought originally from single accreditation, and there's more changes coming to combined programs as they become accredited in the near future. Right now, we have accredited programs like MedPeds, and the others are non-accredited, even though each component is accredited. So there's a process that you probably have noted in the e-communications talking about some of those changes as we move forward to try to move forward with accreditation of the combined programs as well over the next couple of years. So as you go to our ACGME website, you'll find many resources that are available to the community. But always remember, the most important resource always will be the executive director of the review committee that you're seeking information. So please reach out as you have questions. And I'll finish with that, and thank you very much. And I'm going to flip this over to Jennifer. So let me stop my sharing so she can start. Thank you for the opportunity today.
Thank you, Dr. Pence. All right, so that was a great overview of where we've come over the last little bit. So I'm going to kind of take a different view here of kind of as a program director for an ONMM program, and I have been an ONMM program director since 2015. So I started under the AOA accreditation system and then transitioned with ACGME. I have been at Ohio Health Oberlin Hospital in Athens, Ohio for almost 2 years now. I do have a couple of disclosures. I have no financial disclosures, but I do sit on a couple of committees. And I just want everyone to understand that I'm not representing the review committee or any other committee or organization for this presentation. This is based on my own personal thoughts and experiences as a program director. So let's get right on into this. So the big thing that in our profession is the understanding of our ONMM residency. Not only is it hard to say and people get tongue-tied over it, it's a little confusing with how it's broken out into levels of entry. So it's a primary residency discipline in the neuromusculoskeletal system. It's comprehensive relationship to other organ systems, and it's dynamic function of locomotion. It's an educational program that must be 36 months in length, but this length can be shortened throughout different pathways of entry, which we're going to go into because understanding the pathways is important. This can be completed part-time over an extended period of time. I have no experience with that. That would be something to reach out to the executive director of the ONMM review committee with regards to. You would have to have a separate specific curriculum to be able to do that. So prior to matriculation in this residency, residents have to have a sufficient background and or instruction in the osteopathic philosophy and techniques to be able to engage into the curriculum. So that includes all the different domains that's listed that I've copied here for you, and you will have access to my slides. I'll be sure that they get them to you. This is pulled exactly from the standards or requirements from ACGME as they stand. So yes, you can take allopathic and MD physicians into your program, but they're going to it's up to each individual program to decide on what their curriculum is and what their requirements are going to be for that to happen, because they have to have the background training in some capacity. So when we get into our levels of entry, the ONMM 1 level of entry is the 3-year or 36-month residency, where year 1 is your broad-based clinical year, and you're going to have a continuity care clinic devoted to at least an average of a half day per week for osteopathic evaluation and treatment. Then for years 2 and 3, then you're going to go into a minimum of 3 half days of ONMM continuity clinic a week. You're going to have to complete your required selectives per the ACGME requirements, and 4 months minimum of inpatient ONMM consultative service. The ONMM 2 level of entry is 24 months, and this is when residents who have successfully completed a broad-based clinical year somewhere else, and then they're looking to transition into your program. And then, so then years 2 and 3 are exactly the same as what they are for years 2 and 3 of the ONMM level 1. So the ONMM 3 level of entry is a 12 months period where a resident has completed a primary residency in another specialty, and then they're entering into the residency into that 3rd year of level of entry. But they would be a PGY 4 in this instance, and this is the particular ONMM level of entry pathway that I have for my program. Where you have a minimum of 3 half days of continuity clinic a week. You will have 2 months instead of 4 of inpatient ONMM consultative service, because it's a 1-year program. And then you still have to have your selective rotations that's required per the ACGME requirements. But those that's been completed in another primary residency can then be completed, can be counted as completed, and then that month or 100-hour worth of time could be then used as an elective for your resident. So that's a lot of information, I know, but it's such a hard concept to understand in the transition with the language changes that happened. So how to start an ONMM residency? Well, first and foremost, you need a qualified program director that meets the ACGME requirements. You have to have a minimum of 1 board eligible or board certified faculty member with either ABO-NMM or the AOB SPO-NMM. In addition to your program director. Just know that all your faculty members who are going to oversee and precept your residents in both your continuity clinic or in inpatient consultative service have to meet the requirements of being board eligible or board certified, and all faculty that are going to be working in your selective rotations that are going to be required have to be board eligible or board certified within that specialty. So a family medicine boarded physician who is working in the ER is not acceptable to oversee your residents for that selective rotation if it's a selective rotation. For an example, emergency room is not a required selective, but just for example sakes. You need to expect this process to take at least 1 year to get everything established and ready to go before you're able to successfully submit your application. It doesn't seem like it should take that long, but there's a lot of things that you have to have in place. There's an FAQ on how to start a new program for an ONMM residency on the ACGME website. Your FAQs are very important, just as important as your requirements. I've attached this in here, but this spells out the bread and butter of what you have to make sure you have in place to get everything up and going. You have to read all of your documents in detail. There's some links here for you for the program requirements as well as for your FAQs. There's also on the web page, there's a lot of general information in there. There's also modules on the Learn at ACGME that you can do. That it's a learning platform that's online. It does require a login and password, but it is free to set up. And they even have a 3-part course about applying for a program accreditation. If you're starting your process, definitely recommend checking all of this out. You have to have support from your stakeholders in your organization. And that includes needing to have your sponsoring institution and your DIO committed to your osteopathic neuromusculoskeletal medicine residency. They have to be able to understand the curriculum requirements and be able to provide you with those resources necessary. And as we all know, the financial means of supporting anything is always the uphill battle that we have. And there's no great answer to how to fix those. So you have to work within your institutions that you're working with. You need, as program director, to be supported for a 0.2 FTE. So either 2 half days or 1 full day a week of administrative time as program director. And your program coordinator has to be dedicated for your specialty residency alone for 0.5 FTE. So I cannot stress the importance of, if you're looking into doing anything, going to the program director's workshop that's held every year at AAO Convocation, and attending the program director's full course that they have at the ACGME Annual Education Conference. It's usually the first day of the conference. This is especially a beneficial 1-day course for new or newer program directors. Again, you got to work with your stakeholders to ensure that you're going to have all your required rotations with the appropriate boarded faculty, and that those boarded faculty are on board and vested with teaching your residents and taking them on rotation. If you do not have those requirements, it is up to you to make sure that you get a PLA, a program letter of agreement, to find an outside facility to take your residents. And then, the hard part is if they have to travel and do an outside rotation, whether it's for a selective rotation or to complete an inpatient consultative service, that is time that they're going to be away if they have to travel any distance from the continuity clinic. And then, especially in your ONMM 3 level of entry, that can really push you trying to meet your minimum number requirements of patients that need to be seen. Rotations are calculated by 100 hours. So that's 4 weeks, 1 month. You can even do them longitudinal, but you have to be specific about how you're going to meet the 100 hours. If you're doing a longitudinal rotation, the most common longitudinal rotation you'll see across the programs is the ability to do 1 academic longitudinal rotation a year, no more than that. So, and that's for those who want to have experience teaching. If you're affiliated with a COM that's close by with your residency program, the residents do have the ability to help teach in the OPP lab and help work with the students that way, but it cannot go over 100 hours, and you would have to have a policy in place with how they're going to meet that. For example, for the most part, my residents, if they do that longitudinal, it's averages out to about 2 hours a week for the time that they have the OPP lab, which is usually August to May, roundabouts there. You have to make sure that everything is listed appropriately on the block diagram. This is just pulling directly from the requirements with regards to your rotations, the selectives that you have to have. They're here for your reference. They're also in the requirements themselves. So there is different categories that you need to have. And again, if you have an ONMM 3 level of entry and they've had that in their primary specialty, if they've had 100 hours worth of, so a full month of that rotation, not a 2-week elective rotation, but a full month, those can be counted. I cannot stress this enough. The block diagram will make or break you in your program. So there is a guide for construction to the block diagram on the website. There's the link for it. And absolutely reach out to Tiffany Moss. She is our ONMM Executive Director of Osteopathic Accreditation. She is a wealth of resources and information. She's quick to respond to you, and she will help you. She can give you phenomenal feedback to make sure that your block diagram fits all of the needs that it does with regards to how you specify your rotations, your continuity clinic, and any electives that you have offering for your program. So best practices dues. You need to have an established NMM clinic with patient volume that's going to support meeting your needs of the requirements of the residency, which means you already have to have that program up and growing and physicians seeing patients that can back up those residents being able to handle a patient load that's going to get them their minimum number of requirements. And those are in the requirements. I did not post them into the slides, and they are different for which level of entry that you come into the program. Faculty have to have privileges with the hospital that you're working with, and you're going to have active inpatient OMM consultative service that's overseen by your board eligible or board certified ONMM physician. And again, like I said, if you do not have that consultative service, then you have to find a place for your residents to be able to do that. That is an absolute requirement. And that needs to be in place before you're going to submit your application. And all of this, again, is working with your stakeholders and your DIO and your institutions to make sure that you have all of this information and have it easily accessible for your residents. Your policies and procedures, you got to know the requirements. And then for the ACGME, and you got to make sure that your language for your policies and procedures aligns with both your personal organization as well as the ACGME requirements. And with regards to this, I'm going to say, and I have permission from Tiffany Moss to say, it is okay to copy the language from the requirements directly into your policies. The two in particular are your levels of supervision delineations, and here they are directly from the requirements, the most up-to-date requirements. So your direct supervision, indirect, and oversight have these definitions in your policy, but then it's up to you to then specify and delineate on out how you're going to determine how they're going to segue from direct to indirect to oversight, and therefore, but that all needs to be very specifically spelled out in your policies and procedures. The other thing is the final evaluation. As program director, you have to do a final evaluation that you are attesting that the resident is able to enter autonomous practice. You have to have, this is a common program requirement across all specialties, regardless. This is not ONMM specific, but this is directly from the requirement. You need to have the exact wording to keep yourself to not have any questions with regards to things. I've bolded it right there for you to have, and it's key to that final evaluation. And that final evaluation also needs to state that the clinical competency committee also has approved the resident for graduation as part of that. With regards to the ACGME, everything and anything you do as far as communication and things goes through their accreditation database system. We call it ADS for short. There's many different sections that have to be completed as far as if you're starting an initial application, or if you have initial or continued accreditation, you have to keep all the sections updated. All your notifications now come through the ADS system as well. And then within this system, you also have a case log system. So your ONMM residents are required to report case logs for their panel and continuity numbers, and as well as for procedures such as trigger point injections, joint injections into the system. And they have to have access to the case log system. And there is information on the case log system and how to use it on the ACGME website. So if you're applying for a residency, you're going to have a separate specialty specific application in addition to all the other information that you have to enter into the ADS system. So you have to be sure that you have completed all sections of all of them. And then if you already have initial or continued accreditation, you have to be sure that you update the ADS system as things change. Specifically with faculty, if they change, keeping things up to date, making sure board certifications have to be up to date. And as far as documentation, once a year, you have to do an annual update. There is a section specifically called ADS Major Changes and Other Updates section. This is where you're going to give information to your review committee about any faculty program coordinator changes, any curricular changes, rotation changes as far as what you're offering. If there's resident fallout for meeting minimum numbers or any other specific issues that come up, then this is where you're going to put all this information. Also, just for information, there is a place in the system to specifically spell out action plans with regards to any citations if you're already in that process and have gone through a site visit and a review committee meeting. But there is not a place to respond for areas for improvement. Those go in this major changes update. So being sure that you incorporate all of that in there. That's the space for that. Again, like I said, all your faculty have to have up-to-date board certifications, making sure that that's up to date, and it has to be board eligible, board certified in the specialty of the rotation. Familiarize yourself as well as your core faculty with the milestones. We're in the second version of the milestones, and it's called Milestones 2.0. The link, there's a supplemental guide. There's even a webcast video that helps break down how the milestones are done. This is your framework of assessment for development of your resident and the key competencies. There's 6 key competencies. Your milestones are reported to the ACGME, but ACGME does not use the milestones for you to determine completion of a program. This is to help the programs to make sure that the residents are progressing as they feel that they should, to be able to reach that point of autonomous. I've just kind of spelled out so you have the milestone competencies. There's 6 of them. So you have your 5 patient care, your 2 medical knowledge, there's 3 system-based practice, there's 2 practice-based learning and improvement, and there's 3 professionalism competencies that are a part of those milestones. And then you have 3 interpersonal and communication skills components as well. Your program director has to meet with each faculty member at least once a year. That's not just your core faculty, but that's also your designated faculty member for your selective rotations. You want to make sure your goals and objectives don't need to be updated or changed, that everything is still up to standard. And then you want to collaborate on how you can make the experience better. And as always, encourage your faculty they need to participate in faculty development and scholarly activity. As a program director, this is the hardest component that we all struggle with across all specialties, is how do we find the time and make the time to do those 2 things. And then you need to actively participate on your graduate medical education committee with your sponsoring institution. With didactics, this is the exact wording from with regards to your requirements. And then you got to have a monthly journal club, and you have to have attendance documented. So you have to continue your study of osteopathic philosophy throughout. There is an FAQ with regards to this, in particular to the AT Still writings. I put that there for easy reference. You want all your core faculty involved and to give them a well-rounded education. You know, that includes like mock practicals, competency assessments that are separate from your in-training on practical exam that is done through the AAO. Then you want to have dedicated time to practice their skills. I do a monthly book club. A lot of programs do that. We call it book club. It's about an hour time. So I do at least 2 AT Still book readings. I let my residents kind of have the autonomy to pick what ones they would want to do. And then we branch out. So usually do 2 still readings within the first 6 months. And then the next 6 months, then we can branch out and let them decide what other osteopathic books would cater to their interests the most to continue this longitudinal education with regards to our osteopathic book reading. Then again, you've also got to dedicate time to your anatomy, pathophysiology. You know, your main sources are going to be your foundations, the newest edition, the Atlas of Osteopathic Techniques, then your osteopathic approach, diagnosis, and treatment. Those are your minimums. That is not a maximum. You know, if you don't have access to being able to do dissections within your comms, we find that YouTube dissection videos are awesome. You can do short little segments or long segments. They can view these on their own time ahead of discussions, and they work great at really correlating and making your didactics well-rounded. role playing, case presentations, and all these different aspects work really well. There's specific questions within the specialty specific application to where you have to give examples of how you're meeting your interpersonal relationships, difficult news, and such. So one way is not only direct observation when things happen, but also preparing your residents for when these situations happen and doing that. Faculty development is, it's so hard for all of us. We're spread so thin already, but finding ways that you can incorporate this in your staff meetings, it's based upon feedback mechanisms, how to be a better preceptor, time management, educating difficult learner. Take 10 to 15 minutes to dedicate time for a discussion amongst your group, and then you get your faculty development in addition to your meeting. Work with your institution, create organization-wide opportunities for all faculty. This is not just with core faculty. I'm fortunate with Ohio Health. They have a Med Teach on the Go session. They do every quarter. It's over lunchtime, so you can log in while you eat your lunch, and they have some presenters that hit the different areas of faculty development that's spelled out per the requirements. It's a great way to get all your faculty involved. And there are resources and modules on the Learn ACGME site, which again is free. It just requires you to log in and create a password for that. This is directly the wording for faculty development in those domains from the common program requirements for you, just for easy access to look at there. And lastly, your scholarly activity and quality improvement. It's always so hard for us to do. It's difficult to get faculty to participate. So anytime you can try to do group projects, encourage your faculty to be mentors to your residents, collaborating with other residency programs. If you happen to have a family, like a primary residency, like family medicine that's within your institution, your organization, trying to collaborate with them are great ways to kind of meet all of these requirements. Again, best practices don'ts, can't stress this, never make up some assumptions. If you don't know, then you need to ask. Your first person to ask is going to be the executive director. Reach out to her. She's awesome. I have her contact information twice here in this presentation. I've got it coming up here at the end. If you think workarounds for ACGME requirements will be okay, think again, they don't. Stick to the requirements and make sure that you can meet them. Failure to disclose information or reporting inaccurate information is going to get you in trouble. It could get you to, your accreditation withdrawn. Just always stay up to date. If you don't have it, then you report it. You don't have it, report how you're going to try to overcome that. Don't wait to the last minute to complete any documents, your annual updates, or if you're getting ready for a site visit, let's say that you have an initial accreditation, it takes all of the time that they give you to make sure that all of your things are up to date and all your policies and procedures are good, that you've updated the specialty specific application and all the different segments of questions that are in the ADS system. And then, you've got to communicate regularly with your DIO and DME, with your organization, and everybody's got to be on the same page with that, or otherwise you get set up for failure. Again, here is Tiffany Moss's contact and support. She is happy to answer any questions that you have. So that's a lot of information. I tried to put as much in of it that I could to base it, if I, as a program director, things that I would want to know, or easy access to things that are super important. So I will turn it back over to you, Dr. Zamuda, to open it up. I know we took a little longer than we were hoping, but if there's any questions or anything that we can take care of, that would be great. Let me stop sharing my screen here.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Dr. Spence and Kingery, for those presentations. Lots of questions about the slides, and I presume that those will be coming out in an email afterwards. And as we mentioned at the beginning, this webinar is being recorded, so you can access that as well. So definitely a lot of good information that we can share. I want to start with some of the questions that came in during the presentation, because I think they would be best suited for this audience. So I think this would be for you, Dr. Kingery. Could you repeat the hospital consult service requirements for ONMM 3 programs?
For ONMM 3, the requirement is you have to have two months or which would be 200 hours of inpatient consultative service. And that can be done longitudinally. I will caution you, if you're doing it longitudinally, you're going to have to be very specific about how you go about doing that process, such as every Monday through Friday from 4 to 6, that will do rounds, see patients. You have to be specific with that. So for the ONMM 3, then it's 2 months or 200 hours. For your ONMM 1 and 2, it's 4.
And then for you, Dr. Pence, I think this says, might you have the number of MDs that are currently enrolled in OR training slots in programs with OR?
Yes, and there's actually both, lots of DOs and certainly some MDs in those programs. That information is a little more difficult to find on the fly, but right now there's approximately 2,800 osteopathic physicians and designated physicians in OR programs, and there's approximately 100 MDs, both LCME grads and international grads that are in programs with osteopathic recognition. I think what we've noticed over the last few years, that number continues to increase. Not huge numbers, but certainly there's interest, and I would imagine there'll be more as we move forward into the future.
Yeah, and that's something we've experienced here at Ohio Health. And then this one, I'll let either one of you choose. So would the RC consider RTT expansions of ONMM programs into rural areas?
I think that's a question that would have to go back to the review committee to look at, and we'll take that back with us, but that would be a committee decision. So they would have to know certainly about the RTT and have a better sense of that. And we do have a department at ACGME, as many of you know, on underserved that has a lot of information on underserved and rural populations and the RTT process. So.
And then I think we have a couple minutes left. And so there were some questions submitted in advance that I think might be helpful. This one's for you, Dr. Kingery. So what recruitment practices do you feel like have yielded better results for your program?
The big recruitment thing that all of the ONMM residencies participate in is that AAO convocation, which is every year in March. We have a residency fair. It's always on Friday from like 4 to 7 p.m. where we all set up tables, and we set up the tables per region to help with those who might be interested. If you want to go, to the Northeast, and your Northeast people are just sitting together. But that's been really beneficial. It is kind of geared more towards students, but also residents and attendants will attend. Word of mouth is always huge. It needs to start with your comms. The comms need to they need to know that we exist, for one, and those that are really interested, letting them get hooked up with us for rotations. And then if you're affiliated, like I'm affiliated with the family medicine residency here at Oblenus. I actually work with them 1 day a week and incorporate osteopathic care into their curriculum. So working with them and sparking the interest, because especially for myself, I'm in an ONMM 3 program, so they have to have completed a primary specialty first. So I want to use those as those feeder programs and work with those program directors to nurture, to hopefully the ones that are really interested to point them our direction.
Awesome. Well, in the interest of time, I think we may need to submit some of the answers to questions following the webinar. But thank you, Dr. Pence and Dr. Kingery, for this amazing presentation, and to everybody who joined us today. If you have questions, please go ahead and contact us directly at the AOGME. And this will conclude the webinar. And thank you again to everyone who joined us, and have a great evening.
Can I make one comment? I want to thank Dr. Nixon for noting New Mexico without.
I did see that.
It was populate. I had the state. I just didn't populate it with its number. So great catch. Thank you. It's our based on the slides that will be sent out. So
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
thank you very much for opportunity today.